As I forgot to turn the recording on earlier. Zok to Gemara, nifchasa kedelas. What if a flap in the corner was cut, so there was a U-shaped cut, so now there's a flap, it's like a door. Amar Nachman Kadesha Yikonis Isser L'Rachvay. It's not enough if you could just slide a Isser into a slot, and that would be considered a chasaron. You would actually have to slide the Isser in horizontally, so the full width will easily fit into the slot. Nistiga. What if the kana was cut lengthwise? The length of the kana was cut. Even if there's only one ring intact at the bottom, at the top of the kana, it will pull together. Rashi says because when you stretch it, it pulls together, so it'll heal. Mashiach, when there's a cut across the cross section, that as it pulls, it'll pull away. Amru Kamed Rabbi Yochanan. They told this to Rabbi Yochanan that you need a cholya at the bottom and at the top intact. Amar ma cholya, my cholya to come around. What cholya? You don't need a cholya. It will still be kshera. As long as a little bit is still intact at the top and a little bit is still intact at the bottom, this animal's kana will be just fine. Amru Kamed Rabbi Yochanan, Mishmed Rabbi Yonason. They said this to Rabbi Yochanan in front of Rabbi Yonason, in the name of Rabbi Yonason. And he told him back, Yadin Chavrin Bavloi, my Chaverim from Bavel, meaning Rabbi Yonason, knows Lefrusha Haitime to explain properly. Tani Rabbi B'chia by Yosef Kamed Rabbi Yochanan. Kol atap v'kula kosher l'shchita. The entire neck of the animal is kosher l'shchita. Mitabas hagdoila, from the tabas hagdoila, it's all the way on top. At kanfei reya hatachtoina, until the lower lobes of the lung. So let's just see what this means. Mitabas hagdoila. If you remember, we had a discussion where on the kana is the maximum closest to the throat portion that you can check that it will be in the kana. We had even above the tabas hagdoila. We had a shita welt even in the koiva, as long as it's before the shipui koiva. There was like a tapered conic section all the way at the top that connected to the throat. And we had a shita that holds even in that conic section you could cut as long as it's before it starts to taper down. Here the Gemara is saying more of a chomerdik shita that it's mitabas agdoila, a little bit lower, at kanveri atachtoina. Now, the lowest lobe of the lung means you're talking about the kana going all the way through the lungs. That's not what it means. Because the Gemara is called when an animal is hung up. When an animal is hung up, it's hung by its hind legs. So now the lowest lobe of the lungs, which are upside down, which are inverted with the animal, are actually the lungs, the part of the lobe of the lung that's closest to the throat. That's what it means. So it means that kanfareha tachtoina. Zokturava Amarava, that tachtoina shehi al yoina. It's tachtoina when you're looking at the animal upside down, hung by its hind legs. But if you were holding the kana in your hand and you were dangling the lungs below, it would be the top lobes, the top small lobes. Shani Omer, because why is that? Because if you think about it, if you're going all the way to the lungs are not right at the base of the neck of the animal. They're much deeper in the animal. So why would you say that you can shecht all the way until the lungs? Shani Omer kol sheposhet es savara v'roya. The animal naturally stretches its neck sometimes. And as it stretches its neck, it's going to pull on the kana, and it'll extend it further up into the neck area. So any part of the kana that when the animal has its neck naturally fully extended is in the neck area, that would be a valid area to shecht. If you manually grab it and pull it up, that's not good. That's not called in the zone. It's only the parts of the kana that would be in the zone in the neck area when it was naturally stretching. What if you didn't yank it? The animal stretched a lot more than naturally. Is that area also considered kosher shchita? Zok to Gemara teku. Let's have a quick peek in Rashi. Livsheit me'oid tzavara b'shas shchita mau. So the Gemara should take it, and this is very interesting. Rashi always fears us to halacha in this parak, ulechumra in this masechta actually. I guess it was very relevant to Rashi. Always fears us to halacha ulechumra v'chein halacha. Rashi says we have to paskin lechumra. Okay, zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Yosy Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish and Nafik Milsa Beminayu. They had a discussion and learning, and the following halacha came out from between their conversation. Onas b'simonim v'shachat psula. If you pull on the corner and then you cut where the corner now is in the neck because you pulled it, that would be possible, as we just said a moment ago. Nikei v'kana lamata min achaza. What if the corner was cut? Now we know nikei v'kana is the iser, or if it's cut, it's beroi. But what if where it was cut, it was below the breast, meaning inside the lungs already? Then nida and kareya, then they have a din of a lung, and their chesaron will be b'mashu. Let's have a look at Rashi. Nida and kareya b'nekev mashu v'loy beroiv kirgageres. Even though it's the same pipe that's extending down, but once it's in the lung area, at that point it has the din of a lung, and the nika v'mashu will also make it a treifa. Tanur Rabbanan, Ezeu chaza. We know that the kohen got a chaza v'shoik of a carbon. So what exactly is the part of the body that's the chaza that's given to the kohen? Zokt the Gemara, the Brisa, zeharoya esakaka. That first of all is the area of the chest that faces down. So the chest area of a cow, for instance, curves down from the bottom of the neck, which is a vertical, and then it turns under the animal, under the rib cage, which is also part of the breast. So the part of the breast that you give is only the part of the breast that's focused at the bottom of the animal. So Zok Gemara, and how far east and west? Lamata atat tzavar, again, to the bottom until the neck. Because again, we're talking about an animal that's hanging from its hind legs. So on the lower side, up until the neck, lamaila, where there's the chaza end, adakeres, until the belly, that area is what is given to the kohen. We know the rib cage is comprised of a series of 13 ribs. So what you do is you go from the neck. How do you know how far back to go till where the keres is? You go until after the second rib, and you cut those two ribs on either side. Now I did not say Rashi's pshat. I said Tosfos's pshat. Rashi learns it's only until the first rib on either side. Gewaltig. Again, there's going to be some very good videos. Hopefully, we'll have time that illustrates this very clearly on a real animal. Nikav krum shal moyach. What if the membrane around the brain was punctured? Rav Shmuel Darmer Tevayu karma ilah. The skull has a thick lining in it. That's the karma ilah. Then around the actual brain itself, there's a very fine, thin, clear membrane. So the karma ilah means if the outer membrane, the membrane that's thicker, that's connected to the skull, that lines the skull area, that is what's nikav. It's going to be a treifa. Even though the inner membrane was not punctured. For Amrillah, there are those who say ad the inkiv tasa. They both have to be punctured. Amr Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani v'simaneich, a good simon to remember that it's both. It's chayasa the masnach be'moicha, the bag that the moyach, that the brain is sitting in. That's the inner membrane. It's a thinner membrane. It's like a little bag that's wrapped around the entire brain. Amr Rabba bar Chana, Amr Rabbi Shua ben Levi, kenegda bebeitzim nicker. It's very hard to see the membrane that's around the brain itself. It's very thin and clear. You can't really see it when you're looking at the brain. You'll see pictures, you'll see. But the beitzim of the animal, the testicles, have the same thing. There's two layers of membrane, but on the beitzim, the two layers are very clearly seen. So we're just drawing that comparison. Just like by the beitzim, there's two membranes, which are easily seen. So too the brain has two membranes, and according to one sheet, only the outer membrane needs to be punctured. According to the second sheet, they both have to be punctured in order for it to be a treifa. Amar B'Shum ben Pazi, Amar B'Shum ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Moyach, kol ma shebektera nidain kamoyach. The kedera, the pot, is how the Gemara refers to the hollow area of the skull in which the brain would be found. So anything that's in that pot has the halacha of a moyach, which I believe is nikev b'mashu. Let's have a look. I don't see that. So let's see what the Gemara says. Weiter. So anything that's in the skull is nidin kamoyach. Hischel lim shoich. But once it's already tapering down to get into the spinal cord, because we know the spinal cord connects to the brain. Once it's tapering down towards the spinal cord, niden chut hashedra. Also, it's the chut hashedra that I believe is nika b'mashu. Where exactly does that transition occur where it's tapering down into the spinal cord? I will explain what Rabbi Shua ben Levi said is there's two little like nodes made of cartilage that are at the back of the head of the animal that line up right to where the brain is. Yesh munachin al piach deira, by the opening of this pot, which was referring to the cavity in the skull in which the brain is found, there's two little nodes there. That's the transition point. From these nodes and inside is considered brain, and but to the outside of those pulin, it's considered chutz, meaning it's considered like the chut hashedra. And upulin atzman, but what about that little area where the nodes are themselves? Eini idea, I'm not sure if that's considered like the chut hashedra or if that's considered like the brain itself. But umistavra kalofnim, it's probably considered brain material. Rabbi Yirmiyah badak ba'oifa va'ashkach kimin shnei pulin. Rabbi Yirmiyah was baidik and oif, and he also saw this similar pulin. Munachin al piak deira, found right at the opening of the skull, and the point is that on a bird it's a little bit easier to detect. So again, these are all very visual things. I wanted to share a picture in the book, even though the video is probably geschmacker, but we want to. I want to try to get that in. Let me just see where we're up to. Everything in this book, it's a beautiful book, follows the order of the Gemara. So this is where we're up to today. There's a lot of information on the brain. But let's look at the kana as well. Okay, so just to illustrate a little bit what we have over here. This was the Torbus Havetchet from yesterday. This is the upper lobes are these lobes over here. So we said up until the upper lobes is where you could shech. It's called the neck. But it naturally stretches. So what they did was they drew a white line over here on where you're allowed to shech to. And then they stretched it out a little bit, and you could see it stretches, it flexes. Now that line is about an inch away from the lungs. So this natural stretching area is what we said is considered a kosher place to shech, but if you yanked it unnaturally, then it wouldn't be good. Now we're looking at the back of the head of an animal. So the animal's snout is down here. This is the back where it connects to the animal. And it's peeled open a little bit, and this is the, I believe, the right side of the brain. So we're looking over here. Again, it's very hard to detect this, but it's showing that this side does not have the membrane on it, and this side does, or vice versa. But it's very hard to tell the difference other than this is more red. But that's what they're trying to illustrate. These are the beitzim where it's much more clearly visible, the two membranes, here and here. You can see one is folded back. The brain membrane is not as easy to see, but in fact, there is such as well. Again, this is the kedera, the skull. This is the brain inside it. I want to see if you could tell We're going to look for those pulin, for those nodes. Here it shows the two crumim, the upper membrane. Again, it's not so easily to see on the picture. In the demonstration, it would probably be a little bit easier. And now I want to show you those pulin that we were talking about. If you cut the animal's neck off and you're looking at the back of the head, this little thing here, this white thing is the spinal cord as it comes out of the head of the animal, and these are those two pulin that we were talking about, those two nodes. And we said keneged the pulin he didn't know, but it's mistaber kilafnim. But if it's past the pulin, it's already chut hashedra. If it's on the inside of the pulin, it's going to be considered part of the brain. Here you're looking at it from the side. You're looking at the right side of the animal's head, and you see those two pulin and the chut hashedra in between. Here it's a very big close-up. So when you look at the close-up, you see these two pulin, you see the chut hashedra, and you see clearly the outline of the membrane around it. It's not perfectly round because it was cut, so it's contracted a little bit. Then there's some. Then we said that on the oifos, it's much easier to find these pulin. So there's actually a discussion in the Rishonim what these pulin are. I showed you those two nodes, but there's another shita of what it might mean, and we'll get to that in a minute. These are the pulin of the bird. Now on the animal, it's two separate nodes, one's on either side of the chut hashedra, but in the bird, it's like one node that just has a line in it, like a barley kernel. There's a line in the center, and that's sitting over here again. Right, it's right under where the chut hashedra is. Could be belt it's under the chut hashedra. It's easier to see, and that's why the Gemara said they found it on the oif easier. However, there is another shita of what the pulin are, and that is if you separate. This is what a brain looks like. So there's the two main lobes, and then there's a third lobe at the bottom. If you pull them a little bit apart, you lift up the brain because it's not connected here. You can lift it up and see the sections. There'll be these two little things which are called rostral caliculi. I don't know what they are, but could be those are the pulin, and these in a bird are much easier to see without pulling apart the brain because they stick right out. So could be that's what it was referring to, not those nodes, because in a bird they stand right out without having to move anything around, but on the brain of a cow it has to be moved around. So that's why there's a little bit of a discussion of what exactly these pulin are. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Well, the nodes. When you're looking for them to be boidik, they're not as easy to see. So it's hard for me to understand what it's talking about, but I don't see how, if you're talking about the nodes, either way you got to cut it open to see it. So why would it be easier to detect on an oif than it would be on a behema? But if it's this other thing, you don't have to cut it open. Once you pull the skin off, you see it right away, but by the behema, it's very deep inside. So that's why the different pshatim of what these nodes are took form. Zog to Gemara weiter. Nikav alev leveis chalalai. The lave is a thick meat, and the hole has to penetrate the thick muscle tissue all the way into the inner chamber. So here's a cross section of a heart. Here it's blown up. You can see how thick the walls are. So if a needle goes inside, it's got to go through all this thick meat into the chamber, or on the right side, all the way inside the chamber. Now it's interesting to note, just as an aside, the intricate workings of a heart. You see these little sinews in there? These are what operate the heart valves. So these are part of what operate the heart valves. Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Nikav alev leveis chalal. Boy observe leveis chalal koton or leveis chalal godol. If we notice there were two cavities, on the left there was a smaller cavity, and on the right there was a bigger cavity, which cavity does the nail have to penetrate into? Does it have to go at least into the big cavity, or if even it was penetrated into the small cavity? Amar le Abaye, mighty boilach. Why would you have a shaila? Miloitnan, in reference to the lungs, what does it say there? A lung is not considered punctured and treifa unless the nail goes all the way through into the base hasampoinus, which I think are where the arteries are. Yomar Rabba Bar Tachlifa Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Rab, Achetinokev l'simpoin hagadol, l'simpoin gadol. So when it says base as in point, stama, it means the biggest one. So too by the heart, we should say nikava al-leil leves chalala should also mean the biggest one, similar to what it means by the lungs. Zok Gemara hachilasha. There's a very big difference. Hasam leves hasim poinois katani. It says to all the simpoinois. How do you know which one? We'll say laheicha de shavchi simpoinois kulu. We'll say it's to the main simpoin, the one that all the other smaller veins feed into. So when we say leves hasim poinois, we mean the one that is the collection of all the other simpoinois. That's why it means the big one. V'hacha leves chalaloi katani, singular. Mali chalal gadol, mali chalal katan. It doesn't matter which of the chambers of the heart was punctured. Either way, it would be a treifa. Kana halev. What is kana halev? Kana halev is the aorta. The aorta is the main artery where the blood leaves the heart, and it actually splits into two directions. One goes towards the front of the animal and brings fresh blood to the head, and the other branch goes to the back of the animal that feeds all the rest of the hind end of the animal with blood. So Rav Omar b'mashu, Rav says if there's even a small pinprick in the aorta, the animal is going to be a treifa. Shmuel says it has to be beroiv. Shmuel is very makel in this respect in Hilchos Treifas. Hi niu kanalev. What is exactly the kanalev? Amar Rabba bar Yitzchak Amar Rav. It means chelev shal gabe defanois. It's the chelev that are on the sides of the animal. Fragt the Gemara, defanois sol kadaitach. What is fat on the wall of the of the animal's cavity? What in the world does that have to do with the kana of the lathe? A and B is why in the world, if that's punctured, should that be a problem? Zok to Gemara elisha al gabe doifnei reya. What it means is if you look at a picture as the aorta heads towards the back of the animal, it goes through the lung lobes. It actually goes through the lung, and there it's covered with a fatty material. So we're actually referring to an extension of the aorta, which is the main pathway with which the blood is delivered to the animal. That's what we're referring to. That's the kana alev. So let's take a quick look. This is the lung, and this is the aorta as it passes through the lung, over the lung to the back of the animal, and it's a white fatty area, and that's why the Gemara calls it the defanis. So that's still the aorta, and again it's b'mashu. Zog the Gemara weiter. There's three pipes. Now this is a machlokes rishonim which three pipes we're talking about, but we're going to go with Rashi. Chad parish leliba, one goes to the heart, which is the one that we're talking about, the aorta. The chad parish lereya, Rashi learns that's referring to the kana. The chad parish lechveda, and there's also a blood vessel that goes to the liver from the heart. Those are the three colors. Now, what is the halacha with each one of these three pipes? Now, there's others who learn there are three arteries that we're talking about. Rashi learns that one of them is the kana, which is not a pipe carrying blood, rather it's carrying air to the lungs. There's others who learn it means the artery that feeds the lungs. But we're going to do like Rashi. So the reya kareya, the pipe that feeds the lungs has the same halacha as the lungs. Okay, the kveda, the one that feeds the liver, is like the liver, and the lung we know if it's punctured, it's treifa b'mashu. So that pipe down there between the heart and the lungs, where the kana extends there, would be nika b'mashu. The kveda, the vessel that's going to the liver, it has to be almost completely removed for it to be a treifa like the liver itself. And the liba, what about the aorta? Pligi mar barchia plead. The machlokes, that's when Rav and Shmuel argue. They're arguing about that one artery, the aorta. Mar bar Chia masni ibcha. Mar bar Chia actually was, we learned fakert. The reya is kikveda. The kana is like the liver, and it has to be missing most of it in order for it to be possible. The chveda, the artery that feeds the liver, would be kareya, would be like the reya, meaning even a mashu, a punctured, would be a problem. And the liba and the aorta, pligi, that's where Rav and Shmuel argue. Also, Rav Chia bar Yosef, Amar l'Shmaitza, the Rav Kamei Shmuel. Rav Chia bar Yosef told over the halacha that Rav said that if the aorta is nikav, it's partial, it's a treifa b'mashu, and they tell this halacha over to Shmuel. Amar lei, Shmuel did not like it. Now Rashi says, v'yakati loya v'shmiele. Shmuel never heard Rav's halacha yet. The Rav Besura have a Rosh Yeshiva. Rav lived in Surah. V'hosam have a Amar Shmaitze, and that's where Rav taught his Torah. Where Shmuel was Benarda. So when someone told over to Shmuel what Rav said, Amar he said, Ihachi Amar Abba, if Abba, which is a term of endearment that Shmuel used to refer to Rav as, Lo Yoda B'Trevis V'Loi he doesn't know anything. So it's interesting. You see that Hilchos Trevis was a passionate sugya. People got passionate about it because Shmuel said, "Well, how could you say that? You don't know what he's talking about." I'm assuming the reason why it was an area that created such passion is because when the Rav is paskening that an animal is treifa, the Rav is basically telling this fellow, you just lost yourself $1,000 because the meat was very, very valuable. It was a massive, massive financial hit. As we learned yesterday, if a Talmid Chacham will parcel and tarf his own meat and take that huge financial hit, that makes him into a Talmid Chacham where you can give him back an Aveda with Tviyas Ayin. So Huadin, this was a big hit. I can understand why Shmuel would get passionate about it, because if you're going to pass, this is a treifa, think of how much you're being mafsid, the person asking the shayla. Nishbar Shedra, if the Shedra broke and it damaged the spinal cord, that's one of the treifas in the Mishnah. Taner Rabbanan, Chuta Shedra shenifsak berubai. If roiv of the Chuta Shedra was severed, that's going to be the tarfus of nifsak Shedra. Divrei Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Omer, afilu nikev, even if it just is punctured, even if it's not severed to roiv, it's still going to be a treifa. And Hoyer Rebbe Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Patzin like Rabbi Yaakov at the end, who said afilu nikev. Omar Rav Huna said, Ein halacha Rabbi Yaakov. We do not pass like Rabbi Yaakov, it has to be roiv. The kama rubai. So how much is roiv? If that is what has to be severed in order for the nifsak shedra to be a treifa. Rav Amar roiv oiroi. It's roiv of the meat. V'amar la roiv moichai. Now here, there's a membrane which is the wall of the spinal cord, and it's full of brain mush. So what has to be damaged? Is it enough that just the membrane around it gets damaged, or is it the marrow, the brain material that's inside the spinal cord? Is that what has to be mostly missing? Now you would think at first glance that the moyach is the most important thing. The contents of that spinal cord is the most important. That's what transmits the nerve signals. So why would you say that roiv oiroi is worse? The answer is very simple. If the spinal cord is intact and some of the inside mush went missing, it could rejuvenate itself. But if the outside lining, the pipe wall, is ruptured, that's going to leak out. Everything's going to leak out eventually, and it will go bad. It'll go bad. It won't heal, and if anything, it's going to cause infection inside, and the animal has no chance of survival. So, if you hold even roiv moichai, when it's still completely contained within the spinal cord, it's still a treifa. Kolshkin roiv oiroi, where you have a puncture on the outside. But Laman Dama roiv oiroi, maybe roiv moichai mai. What would be the halacha for roiv moichai was missing, but it wasn't actually punctured? Tashma, Damar Niyuli or Nivli was the name of a Chacham Rash. He says, Amar Rav Huna, Rubai Sha'amru is roiv oiroi. That's what the roiv of the skin, the membrane, the pipe wall has to be cut. Moyach ze loy mayla v'loy moyrid. We don't care. We don't care what's going on with what's inside. Why don't we care? Because as long as it's there, it'll rejuvenate. It'll be fine. As long as the wall of the pipe is not punctured. Rav Nosson bar Avin have a Yosef kamei the Rav. Rav Nosson bar Avin was sitting in front of Rav, and Bodak b'roy v'roy, and then the Kabodak b'roy moichai. But then he checked for Rav Moichai when we just said that it's like Ma'ila b'loy moirid. Amalei, he told him. So Rav told him, "In roiv oirei kayim moyach zeh einay Ma'ila v'einay moirid." As long as the pipe wall is complete, we don't worry about what's going on so much inside. Amar Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, nismareach. What if the contents of the spinal cord completely dissolved into a liquid? That already is possible. It's going to run right out. Nismas meis, if it only got soft and mushy and it wasn't as hard and solid as a spinal cord's normal texture is, then it's also going to be possible. I touched one that's complete liquid and one that's just softened up, but the Gemara is going to tell us how we know that. Hamaracha is called shenishbach kikisai. It has to become like a water. It couldn't stand. If you held a piece of the spinal cord up, you cut it, you held it, it wouldn't be able to stand. It would flop over. It didn't maintain rigidity. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah, what if it's in good condition, but you cut a section of spinal cord and you're holding it in your hand, but normally the contents of that spinal cord is not so thick and heavy, and if you held it, it would actually remain standing like a hard drinking straw. We said if it flops over, it will be possible. But that's if it flops over because it was mimasmes. It's because the insides were already starting to dissolve. But what if they weren't dissolved? They were in perfect condition, but for some reason they were actually thicker and heavier than typical, and that extra weight would cause it to fold over. What would be the lachas of Kamor take? The Rav Omar nismasmes is possible, but nismasmes is kosher. What is nismasmes? Rashi says if there's a little blank spot inside where it's hollow. Nismasmes kosher, hadar nakat nismasmes pasul. The reason why we repeat again nismasmes pasul in reference to nismasmes kosher is the loitem in nismasmes v'nismasmes chadahu. You shouldn't think they're the same thing. Ulaflugi also that it's a machlekes. Rather, nismasmes is something separate. It's nisroikain be'amoich miktas me'elam. So part of the spinal cord was not full of whatever its contents are supposed to be. That's going to be kosher. Nismazmeis, beimish nismazmeis, kosher. Meitzvei Reb Shimon Elazar Eimer, beimish nismazmeis Michael Treifa. So we have over here a stira. Gemara ahi nismazmeis itmar. There, the reason why some content is missing is because it's dissolved. We're talking about where all the matter inside is healthy. It just there's a little gap in there. Is that so? Levi have a Yosef ve'mesusa. Levi was sitting in the bathhouse. He saw a person who was in the mikveh and he slipped. People slip in the mikveh if it's slippery. The tarulation, he banged his head. Rashi is either on the floor or on the wall, but he got a concussion. And when Rav saw that, Rav said, Amar, this mazmiz moicha today. Look, this fellow had a condition of this mazmiz moicha. Now, if Rav was saying that, doesn't he mean to say that? Why is it relevant? This mazmiz moicha? He was saying this guy's going to die. He's not going to make it. Isn't that what Rav would have meant if he pointed out that this person, Rahman al-Islam, was this mazmez moiche? Amar Bai, no. All Rav meant to say was, Vibalti had this condition, not that he's going to die, but it's going to make him that he can no longer have children. And Rashi explains, because everything down to our reproductive organs rely on the electronic signals from our brain that come through the spinal cord. Once something like that happens, it's going to damage the messaging from the brain down to the nether regions. Until where in the back of the animal is it considered chut hashedra? There's a big discussion of what this is, but all along the spinal cord there are nerves that come out of it. The spinal cord is the nerve center of the whole animal, but all the way to back where the legs are, there's three larger nerves that come out of the spinal cord on either side that go in to become the tendons in the animal's legs, which actually form the gid anosha. So it's up until those three arteries, not arteries, three nerves that come out from the spinal cord, that spinal cord, that if it's nickel, you'll have a problem. But anything that's to the rear of that will no longer affect the movement of the animal's legs, and therefore the animal would not be a treifa. Rav Dimi bar Yitzchak hava kaboy lemezel lebeichazoi. He once wanted to go to Beichazoi. Also lekamei the Rabbi Yehuda. He came to Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei, and he told him lech v'limar beina prashos heicha. Show me where exactly these three nerves are, so I could know where the chut hashedra ends. Amalei zil aiseli gedi. Bring me a little goat, and I'll show you va'achvalach. Aiseli gedi shmeini. He brought a very fat goat. Amalei, here I won't be able to show you because b'li etzvei, v'lo yadia. It's so full of fat that these three nerves are buried in fat. You're not going to be able to see them. Okay, Aisele Kacha. She brought him a very thin, lean animal. Amalei, I still can't. B'li etzvei. Since the animal is so lean, the nerves get compressed against the bones of the animal, and it flattens them out. And again, below you won't be able to see them. Amalei ta'a gemarachach. Gemara, let me teach you exactly what it is. Hachi Amar Shmuel. Now we have three veins. There's three arteries that come out. Now we're saying up until the three arteries is where the spinal cord is. After that, it's no longer considered spinal cord. Legabi the psul of tarfus. The question is, there's three of them. At what point during these three does it transition from spinal cord to just a nerve ending? Zok to Gemara as follows: Ad achas treifa. The first nerve that out of the three, there it's pure spinal cord, and of course there'll be a psul. Shalish is kosher, but if it's after the third vein, all the way out the back, then that will be kosher. Shnia, but what if it's in between the two, the first and the third, by the second, any of that, I'm not sure if that's where the spinal cord ends yet. Ad ve'ad v'chlal. Does it mean ad ve'ad v'chlal, meaning to the back of the third? So we'll get into that tomorrow. It's 7:51, so I'm just going to show you the stand pictures because we're not going to have time to watch the videos today. But I'll quickly show you. This is a deconstruction of the heart area. So these are this is the heart, and this is the liver, and these are the different arteries. So chad parish l'chveda, the artery that comes out of the heart that goes to the liver is referring to this. Then there's the aorta, which is here, and this branch line is feeds the kidneys and goes on. Again, we have the three. This is the heart. These are the lungs around it. So this is the kanale, which is the aorta. And then there's this thing is the parish l'chev. That's the kana that goes from the heart to the liver, and then the kana Rashi learns is the trachea is the third pipe. These are the veins we're talking about. This is an animal that its guts have been taken out, and you're looking at it. It's hanging from its hind legs, and its two sides are split open, so you can see inside the cavity of the animal up to the spine. And this here in the center of the spine, you can see these three large veins, or they're really nerve endings that come out of the spinal cord that go down the legs of the animal. This is a close-up. This is further back. So you can see the hind legs are here, and it's hanging in the inner cavity. But once you open it up, you can actually see them. And if it would be very fatty, it would be covered over. And if it would have been very lean, they would have been compressed. If it's the normal medium type of animal, you can actually see their outline in the animal. And I believe he has here a pictorial to show what it looks like. So here's the spinal cord going through the spine, and these is where these three larger gidim come out, and the spinal cord noticeably tapers and becomes a much thinner line after that. So any place after here, if the spinal cord is severed, there won't be a problem because the full functioning of the legs will still be there. The Gemara said, ad v'lad b'chlal, so the question is how far? Is it for sure up till here is spinal cord, for sure after here is not spinal cord, and the question was in between over here, if it was cut, was that spinal cord or not? Okay, so we'll stop here, Ben Hashem, and we will continue tomorrow. there's really, I strongly recommend looking at those videos from from